So, my name is Hans-Christoph Steiner. In this context, I guess I'm a composer. I don't usually draw very clear borders, I guess. So I'm going to be presenting this piece, Solitude, that was created in the software PD. And I'm always kind of straddling. I also work on this program itself, which is a tool that a lot of other people use. So for me, it's always kind of swinging back and forth between art making, tool making, then sometimes completely technical. I think the best way to introduce this is just actually to play it. It's not very long. So here, this is the score, and it actually plays it directly, and you'll see a little cursor starting on the left. Actually, I think I need to make it slightly bigger, or maybe not. Can I make it bigger? Sorry, just trying to get it to line up on screen. Here we go. I lost my... Okay, that looks workable. All right. Here it goes. Make sure we have some audio. We do. No. Sorry about this. Technical difficulties. Well, normally it just plays, but today it's being a little grumpy, so we'll have a little bit of a mess up on the introduction. So that was in mono and a little bit distorted, but I think you get the idea. Put that aside. And talk a bit about it. And where's the last one? Okay. So I'm going to just talk about, of course, Xenakis and how how he was a key inspiration for me to get to this point, and also my perspective on the music of Xenakis, which I think is somewhat different. And I would really, for what really inspired me about it was more the experiential nature of it than the math and the architecture behind it. So for me, that's really how I learn things, is just trying to do them. So my impulse to compose came from just hearing sounds in my head and wanting to like structure them and get them out. And playing some music as a kid, but this was kind of something separate. Like I enjoyed playing piano and trumpet and things like that, but I never really had an impulse to write that music. And then really when I started learning, just thinking, okay, I should learn to compose this music that I hear, learning that this kind of notation always just felt like math homework to me. It really seemed really totally separate than what I was inspired to make. So by happenstance, I did an internship in the Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics at Stanford when I was young, and there I was exposed to all sorts of sounds and things like that really inspired me. But once I really dove into this stuff and started learning things like C mix and C sound and getting some sounds out of it, but really finding that working like this was also really separate from inspiration. This was different than the math homework, but more, it was such a long process just to get something out that I had lost the idea by the time I had actually generated a sound. So around that time, I would dig through the library and the name Xenakis came up, and found this piece. So Mycenae Alpha, drawn with the UPIC system. This was shown earlier today too. So of course, when I was looking at it, it was a piece of paper, but I could see, there's this very clear relationship to the sound and the drawing, and this was like, oh my God, like this is something I can do. I feel the relationship. This is something that's immediate. At that point, it was just a fantasy because I was seeing this paper. And just hearing the music coming off of this paper and thinking, okay, how can I get my hands on a UPIC system? Not that easy in 1995. But that experience just set me on kind of like a mission of I can learn this technical stuff to get to the point where I can create music in a way that it flows with the inspiration rather than runs against it. And so through that, I also learned about other pieces of Xenakis, and so something like the Phillips Pavilion for me, it was also had this huge impact. I mean, this is something that I had no conception of doing myself with this huge scale of work. But what really drew me into something like this was that, so on one hand, he talks a lot about, I mean, there's lots of math behind it, and math is obviously very important to him. But the actual experience of going to the Phillips Pavilion, I can mostly imagine, but just from hearing and seeing recreations, was really a sensory experience. I mean, you walked, it was immersive, there was many things going on, and so while math was obviously a huge part of it and how it was composed, it was really a force of senses, lights and sounds and all this intermixed, and that to me seemed like this is really what this is what we should be using the computer for. Is this power of, I don't know, it feels like kind of communicating emotions and experiences and senses in this kind of abstract language. So things like that and Persepolis and things like that really kind of set the tone for me in about thinking about how I set the tone for my thinking about composition and music and the relationship to the emotion that I feel. And then I noticed that kind of through listening to that, I would also hear this same pattern sometimes crop up in something like in Mozart, in some Schubert choral works, or Rachmaninoff and things like that, where it's starting to the tonality of it is starting to fade, and it gets into almost timbral expressions, very abstract expressions of what emotions that really touched me. And from this, it kind of brought together this idea, like I really liked all this tonal music, that the process seemed like math homework, but the result, a lot of this stuff I really enjoyed. But I could see that there was this really powerful opportunity for bringing in this abstract timbral nature and using it as a source of tension against this tonal music. And so that, on top of this kind of drawing idea, was kind of crystallizing in my head, like this is what I wanted to play with. So in a way, it was maybe representing my musical education of listening to all the classics versus my compositional impulse of something very abstract. So then I also heard, so it was a few years later, Duke Ellington suites and like the Queen suite especially is one that really resonated with me on this idea. And then also Money Jungle, this is with Mingus and Max Roach. And I kind of heard the same impulse, and I was really struck by these little moments of kind of outburst of kind of, it's hard to explain, little outbursts of expression that kind of pop up throughout the piece, and that seemed really related to this tension of tonality and timbral music. And then most directly, I was trying to think of like a compositional technique about how actually can I use a computer to experiment with that idea. And I heard this piece called Le Tombeau de Maurice, which is by Ludger Brümmer, where he used a computer to manipulate Le Tombeau de Couperin by Maurice Ravel. And so there was this same kind of idea that I was hearing of taking tonal music and then trying to mix it up with more computery timbres, and after many years of generating sound with the computer, this was kind of written in a language that I understood how to express myself in. So it was the kind of the gelling of it all. So here's a little clip of it. Go. Oops. Please play. Okay, I'll play it from here. So then, to tie it all together, then I had the compositional idea in my head. I had the technical know-how I sketched out in my head, but then how to actually compose. And now, so this was, I guess 2003, 2004 when I started this. It was not inconceivable that I could just write this myself and run it on a regular computer. So I want to show that a bit. Okay. So the piece that I just played in the beginning, it's built all from samples of very specific moments of a song called Solitude on the album Money Jungle. That's the name. And also it seemed to make sense to me. Why is it doing this? Sorry, screen issues. It seemed to make sense to me because composing on the computer is usually a very solitary activity, from my experience at least. So I can just quickly play. Some of the samples. So those kind of little tinkles to me just sound like little outbursts. And there it's getting quite timbral in a way. So each one of these samples that I just played is represented by color here. I think it ends up not being so understandable when watching it, but it was mostly kind of driven by things that seemed easy for me to sketch with. So there's two, like each one is made up of a related structure. These two, this is like a darker yellow, or this one's off the screen, these two, those two. The top one is, start with this one. So the top part, this is the beginning of the sample, this is the end of the sample. So what I'm saying is at this point in time, start playing that much of the sample. At this point in time, play that much. And so basically this makes it kind of, this is like a light smear, where something like this, really thick, ends up really just kind of smearing the whole sound. And then you can't really see it here, but it's opening with just direct quotes, which is a line. Just saying, play the whole thing unedited. And then the bottom part is the width of the sound is how loud it is, and then the position of it is the left and right location. Which we didn't hear because it's mono apparently here. So I can just take these things and kind of throw them around. Let's try that one. So then to manipulate them, you can kind of change the shape of them. Let's see. And then grab their points and move them around. See if I can totally change the beginning. And then you just literally line them up where they go in time. So, I mean, if I wanted to, I guess there's one that's playing, it's probably this one. If I wanted to make it, so this is kind of making it go backwards because there's a downward slope. I can kind of accentuate that. Ooh, there's too many points clustered in here. Let's see, if I make it, well, we won't be able to hear the left or right, but if I move it there, it can make it loud and fade out. Seems to be getting one from somewhere else here. Oops. Let's try a different one, just to hear a different sound. So this is just what I mean by a smear. It's just kind of this piano sound smeared out, because it's just a slowly just slowly layering on all the chunks. Maybe I'll actually delete all those. Yeah, no. So this, I could make it kind of turn into a really quick smear. And it's still playing now because it has to finish all that stuff that it started. It makes it a little disconnected sometimes. I must be playing some of this other stuff. It's a little temperamental because something's still playing. Normally, maybe it's just, oh, there's 2 copies of it. That's the problem. Here we go. Never did that before. I'll just show one more here, now that it's working properly. So you can see that kind of line. When you have that kind of slope with a thin line, that basically makes it a direct quote. And for me, that was kind of the element that I was most looking to be able to play around, is to be able to quickly change from these kind of smears and abstract sounds and to just snap right into a moment that's like a quote of this tonal music, but that doesn't feel like it's coming from somewhere else. So something like what you hear here, hopefully, this very abstract but sound that's just smeared around, but it's made up of the same piano tones that are then played directly here, and then right back into the smearing. So, in closing, Thanks for hearing me. And this is on my website. You can download it. You can play with it. You can remix it. You could put different samples in it and make something entirely different. Yeah, I would love to see. I've seen it remixed. For some reason, it's gotten a lot of attention from graphic designers, and I find myself graphically challenged. The colors I always thought were kind of garish, but so I'd like to see a lot more experimentation with it from the musical side, and actually I want to make it easier just to try and make it so that people can kind of explore the idea of sketching with computer music on their own. So thank you.